I watched the George Floyd documentary that Candace Owens put up. They hit him with the fentanyl. If you look, the guy's knee wasn't even on his neck like that. When he said mama is his girlfriend. They said he screamed for his mama. Mama was his girlfriend. It's in the documentary.
What's going on, America? I'm the right-winged angel, Oliver Mack, and in this video, we got to talk about Kanye West. Of course, we got to talk about Kanye West because Kanye West is always in the news. He's always saying something that get people triggered, and this time, he did the cardinal rule of black people. He said something about the savior of the black community, George Floyd. Now, you know, Kanye, you can't say anything about George Floyd. He's like Jesus to these people, but he was spitting straight facts, and people, of course, they get mad when anybody tells the truth. So let's check out what Kanye West said and why people are so angry at him.
Because I'm Moses out here. You know what I'm saying? I watched the George Floyd documentary that Candace Owens put up. One of the things that his two roommates said was, they want a tall guy like me. They want a tall guy like me. And the day when he died, he said a prayer for, 8 minutes. Mm-hmm. He said a prayer for 8 minutes. They hit him with the fentanyl. If you look, the guy's knee wasn't even on his neck like that. When he said mama is his girlfriend. They said he screamed for his mama. Mama was his girlfriend. It's in the documentary. But something that hit me, that fucked me up when I was watching the documentary, and it said, they want a tall guy like me. When I looked at that image of him, this tall black dude with the bald head, he reminded me of somebody else. Who you think he reminded me of?
Virgil.
He reminded me of Virgil.
Okay, that's all. He's just talking about his designer friend who passed away. But that's what they're outraged about, the fact that Kanye went against the narrative, right? The narrative is that George Floyd died because Derek Chauvin had his knee pressed against his neck and it cut off his oxygen supply. He could not breathe. They wear the t-shirts that said, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. Even though if you watch the trial, even though if you watch clips that people on the right have put out, we saw that George Floyd was saying he couldn't breathe even before he was on the ground. So this whole narrative about I can't breathe is completely false, because why would you believe that someone can't breathe when you have your knee on them if they said they couldn't breathe while you didn't have your knee on them? So why would you believe that? He said he was claustrophobic, didn't want to get in the car. When they pulled him out of a car when they were trying to arrest him, think about that. Someone is constantly lying to you, but you're supposed to believe them when they say they can't breathe. Now, I'm not a police officer, but I imagine there are many police officers who have been in situations with suspects who lied just to get out of being arrested. So it's clear to see that George Floyd lied a bunch of times. How can you say, I'm claustrophobic, I can't get in a car, when you were sitting in a car when the police approached you? Make that make sense. But if you're a black man, you can never, ever, ever say anything about King George Floyd, about the savior of the black community. You can't say anything. The fact that Kanye West actually watched Candace Owens' documentary, and he's getting a lot of this information from the documentary. Now, you would think that if black people really love George Floyd the way that they say they do, they would have watched the entire trial, which I did. So a lot of the information that Kanye West is talking about, I already knew because I watched the trial. The defense attorney for Derek Chauvin, he presented a different angle that showed that Derek Chauvin's knee was not on George Floyd's neck. It was on like his shoulder blade. So the narrative of the knee on the neck is a false narrative. On the other side of the street, when you're looking at the camera, it appears that his knee is on his neck, but when you look at the other side, it's not even on his neck, it's on his shoulder blade. So it completely dispels his narrative. And I guess the biggest thing that they're upset about is Kanye West brought up the point about the fentanyl. Now, there are some people who are saying that the amount that he ingested was not enough to kill him. But when you look at the fact that we've seen that he had a heart problem, he had a hypertensive heart disease. His heart was heavier than a normal heart, which means that he needed more oxygen to his heart than a normal person. And the fact that, he smoked and he did drugs complicates the heart issue, right? So if somebody is subduing you, if you're actively resisting, the fact that he was fighting the cops at every turn during this encounter, when they were trying to put him in a car, he didn't want to get in the car. He's fighting. He actually, here's the thing that most people don't know. Another thing that if you watch the actual trial, you would have noticed, he told the police officers to put him on the ground. So if you told the police officer, put you on the ground, and then the police officers have to subdue you in a prone position because you asked to be on the ground, the police officers were trying to make you comfortable. He said, put me on the ground. They put him on the ground. And while he was on the ground, so he's not resisting and hurting the officers or hurting himself, they had to put him in the prone position. Derek Chauvin had to put the knee across the shoulder blade because that's what he was trained to do when you have a suspect on the ground. I've seen multiple videos of other police officers who put the knee across the shoulder blade just like Derek Chauvin did, and nobody died because of it. So in this whole trial, you can see that there was insurmountable, reasonable doubt, right? There was doubt casted throughout this whole thing. Even when the coroner or the medical examiner comes out and says, well, it was drugs, he had hypertensive heart disease, complicated with law enforcement subdual. Now, if the law enforcement officers are doing what they're trained to do, and because of them doing, and while they're doing what they're trained to do, if you have heart complications that you end up dying because you're being restrained, in my opinion, that's not the police officer's fault. If I'm restraining somebody, say they tried to rape my child or molest my child, I get them off my child, and I'm holding them until the police get there. I'm holding them with all my might. Hey, stay here until the police get here. You need to go to jail for what you've done. And I don't want you to get away with this so you can do this to somebody else. Now, while I'm holding that person has heart problems, right? And I'm holding him while they're struggling to get away. They end up dying while I'm holding him. Is that my fault? Should I be held responsible for this person who tried to molest my child? Should I be responsible if I'm trying to hold him and wait for the police officers to get there? If I am, then that's pretty messed up that we live in a world where criminals are put above law-abiding citizens. And I think that's what happened with this George Floyd case. You have police officers who are just trying to do their job. Now, you can say that Derek Chauvin could have shown more empathy and compassion, but you also have to understand he was in a situation where you have all these bystanders that are irate, that are screaming and cursing at them. If he actually lets up on George Floyd, like, what will happen? And do you know that this person is not faking? And then you let up on them, and then they get up and they run away, or they get up and they grab your gun and kill you. Do you know that that's not going to happen? Of course you don't. So that's why you have to do what you need to do to subdue the suspect. And whatever happened, in my opinion, that's on George Floyd. Had George Floyd not been resisting, had George Floyd just complied, had George Floyd not been on drugs, had George Floyd not tried to pay with a counterfeit bill, and we see in the documentary from Candace Owens, if he would have just said, okay, my bad, I shouldn't have tried to pay with this counterfeit bill, let me go on my way. If he would have done that, then I don't think they would have called the police. So there are a lot of things in this situation that George Floyd did to amplify it to where it ended up going the way it did. And I really don't blame the police officers. I blame George Floyd for this. So I think the black community really has to wake up. Please go out and watch this documentary. The Greatest Lie Ever Sold by Candace Owens. It details a lot of this stuff. And it shows you exactly what happened. Had George Floyd not been on drugs, had George Floyd not had these heart issues, he would be alive today, even with the police subdual. So that's what you have to think about. What can you take away of the? What can you take out of this situation to make George Floyd live? Right? I think that even without being subdued by the police officers, down the road, George Floyd could end up dying because he was heavily on drugs. He had heart issues. So you put drugs, methamphetamines, fentanyl, you put drugs in with a heart issue. It doesn't that mean that you could potentially die from that? I mean, I think so. Maybe the woke people out there who don't want to listen to facts and evidence, maybe they'll think, no, you can't die from that. I think you could absolutely die from that. So had George Floyd not had the drugs in him, if the police just subdued him on the ground without the drugs and without the heart issues, George Floyd, in my opinion, would have 100% made it out of that situation and ended up going to jail. We've seen countless police officers who have subdued subjects, just like Derek Chauvin subdued George Floyd, and they walked away no problem. Had this prone position, had this knee across the shoulder blade been a big issue, then they would have told police officers, hey, don't ever do this. If you do this, you're going to get reprimanded and fired from your job. That did not happen in this police department. And I don't know if it happened in the other police departments, but during the trial, they presented evidence. Hey, there's training that shows police officers how to do this. So it can't be that bad if there's training to show them how to do this. It's just ridiculous to me. It's mind blowing that people do not look at facts and evidence. They just want to lead with emotion. In my opinion, I'm going to keep saying that, Derek Chauvin should have never been found guilty because there was insurmountable amounts of reasonable doubt presented by the defense attorneys to get him an acquittal of all charges. They wanted Derek Chauvin's head on a stick. And also there was jury and then politicians who didn't want to riot. Because had Derek Chauvin been acquitted, there would have been a riot in Minneapolis. They would have destroyed the city. They would have destroyed everything. They would have left nothing intact. They would have went to neighborhoods. Everything would have been burned down had Derek Chauvin been found innocent or been acquitted of all charges. That's what would have happened. So we had a lot of people who had reason to convict him and find him guilty of all charges. And that's what they did because they wanted to avoid these things. There was no way. We live in a system, or we have a system in place that says if you have reasonable doubt, you cannot convict this person. And there was a bunch of that in this case. Like, no question, there was a bunch of that in this case. In my mind as a juror, I would have said, okay, well, the drugs and the heart issue, had he not had that, would he survive the knee on the shoulder blade? He probably would have. Okay, reasonable doubt. There's no way we could find this man guilty. But that's just my 2 cents. There's a lot of people coming out against Kanye West for what he said, but I think he was 100% accurate. It's mind-boggling that people just don't want to hear that. They want to defend their savior, St. George Floyd. And you can't say anything about George Floyd. They put up all these statues of George Floyd, of course, because this is the man that they want black children to look up to. Even though he was a career criminal, robbed a pregnant woman, put a gun to her stomach. He was a drug addict. He was always in trouble with the law. But they want our black children to look up to him. No way, not in my household. My son doesn't even know who George Floyd is. And I'm going to keep it that way. All right, thank you so much for watching this video. Please hit the like button, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Visit the description section so you get links to my social media and some cool merch. All right, I'll catch you guys on the next video. I'm out. Peace.